It was a busy night at Melania's elegant cafe in San Diego. The place glowed under the soft shimmer of crystal lights hanging from the ceiling. The tables were dressed with spotless white tablecloths, and the silverware sparkled under the warm lighting. Waiters moved gracefully between tables, balancing trays of mouth-watering dishes. At the heart of the cafe sat three women. Leading the trio was Evelyn Monroe, a wealthy socialite who thrived on flaunting her riches. Draped in designer clothes and sparkling with expensive jewelry, Evelyn carried herself with an air of superiority, as though the world was hers to command. Among the staff was Emily, a young waitress juggling extra shifts to save for college. Exhaustion shadowed her movements as she carefully navigated the bustling cafe. While carrying a tray of glasses, Emily stumbled slightly. Evelyn noticed, her lips curling into a smug smile. To Evelyn, people like Emily were invisible until they made a mistake. Emily's hands trembled as she carried Evelyn's plate back to the kitchen. Mumbling an apology, Evelyn wasn't finished. "They'll hire anyone these days," she remarked loudly. "How hard is it to carry food without almost dropping it?" Laughter erupted from her friends. Emily swallowed her tears, determined to keep her composure. She had dealt with rude customers before, but Evelyn's words stung deeper. The woman in gray continued to watch, her thoughtful gaze following Evelyn's every move. Meanwhile, Evelyn leaned back, mocking Emily further. "Did you see how she walks? It's like she's about to fall over. Honestly, if she can't handle this job, maybe flipping burgers is more her speed." Emily's hands trembled as she carried Evelyn's plate back to the kitchen, her cheeks burning with humiliation. She kept her head down, hoping no one noticed the tears welling in her eyes. As she passed other tables, a few kind-hearted customers gave her sympathetic looks, but none dared to intervene. For Emily, this felt like one of the longest walks of her life. Back at Evelyn's table, the mood was starkly different. Evelyn leaned back in her chair, her voice dripping with disdain as she continued to mock the young waitress. "Honestly, they'll hire just about anyone these days," she declared, loud enough for nearby diners to hear. "How hard can it be to carry a plate without nearly dropping it? It's not rocket science." Her friends giggled, their laughter echoing in the hushed cafe. Evelyn reveled in the attention, crossing her arms smugly as though she delivered some grand punchline. The atmosphere around their table grew tense, with other patrons exchanging uncomfortable glances. The woman in the gray outfit remained seated in the corner, her posture relaxed but her sharp eyes fixed on Evelyn. She watched as Evelyn gestured exaggeratedly, mimicking the way Emily had stumbled earlier. "Did you see that? It was like she could barely stand up straight." Evelyn laughed, shaking her head. "Honestly, if she can't even manage this job, maybe she's better suited to flipping burgers at some fast food joint." The woman's expression didn't change, but her gaze seemed to intensify, as if carefully weighing every word Evelyn said. Around them, the energy in the room shifted. Some customers appeared visibly upset by Evelyn's cruelty, while others avoided looking at her entirely. Emily, meanwhile, stayed in the kitchen for a moment longer than necessary, taking deep breaths to steady herself. She'd dealt with rude customers before, people who snapped when their coffee wasn't hot enough or complained about portions. But this was different. Evelyn's words cut deeper, filled with a coldness that made Emily feel small and insignificant. The woman in gray adjusted her seat slightly, her calm exterior belying the thoughts racing in her mind. She had seen enough. When Emily finally emerged from the kitchen with a fresh plate, her hands were steady, but her heart raced. She approached Evelyn's table cautiously, forcing a polite smile onto her face despite the sting of the earlier insults. "Here you are, ma'am. The chef prepared this specially for you," she said, her voice quiet but composed. Evelyn glanced at the plate without much interest, giving it only the briefest of inspections. "I guess it'll do," she said dismissively, flicking her hand as though she were waving Emily away. "Next time, though, get it right the first time. And while you're at it, learn how to walk properly. You're making this place look bad." The cruelty in Evelyn's tone was sharp, designed to sting, and her friends chuckled, enjoying the spectacle. For Evelyn, this was all part of the performance, showing the room that she was someone important, someone who could critique and command with ease. Emily's polite mask faltered for just a second, her lips trembling as she turned and walked away. Around the cafe, patrons shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Some stared at their plates, pretending not to hear. Others glanced at Evelyn with barely concealed disgust. But in the corner of the cafe, the woman in the simple gray outfit didn't look away. She watched everything with a calm but unwavering focus, her expression giving nothing away. She saw the way Evelyn's words lingered in the air like a bitter cloud. She noticed how Emily's shoulders sagged slightly as she retreated to the kitchen. And most importantly, she saw the quiet ripple of discomfort spreading across the room. Evelyn, oblivious to the tension around her, leaned back in her chair and continued talking. "You'd think places like this would have higher standards," she said, her voice carrying across the room. "Honestly, how hard is it to find decent staff these days?" Her friends laughed in agreement, and Evelyn basked in their approval, her confidence only growing. She picked up her glass of wine, swirling it slowly as she added, "If I ran this place, I'd make sure things were done right. This kind of incompetence wouldn't fly under my watch." The woman in gray adjusted her posture, leaning slightly forward as if preparing to take action. Her calm demeanor didn't waver, but there was a quiet determination in her eyes, as though she had already decided what needed to be done. Evelyn's voice droned on, mocking Emily's earlier stumble. "Did you see how she carried that tray? I thought for sure she was going to drop it. Honestly, maybe she should stick to flipping burgers or stocking shelves, something she might actually be good at." The tension in the room was palpable now. Some customers whispered to one another, while others sat in silence, clearly uncomfortable but unsure of what to do. Emily hadn't returned from the kitchen yet, and the woman in gray glanced briefly toward the back, as if making a mental note. Then, without a word, the woman stood up and walked purposefully toward the manager. She leaned in, speaking quietly but firmly, and the manager's eyes widened slightly as he listened. Whatever she was saying, it was clear that it wasn't a simple request. Back at the table, Evelyn laughed, oblivious to the quiet storm brewing around her. She continued bragging about her latest luxurious vacation, completely unaware that her night was about to take an unexpected turn. When Evelyn's table requested the bill, she reclined in her chair, exuding the same confidence she had displayed throughout the evening. Her friends chatted and laughed, their conversation peppered with comments about their upcoming luxury trips and shopping sprees. Evelyn, clearly pleased with the evening's attention, didn't notice the manager approaching their table. He carried an elegant envelope and a bottle of champagne, but his expression wasn't one of celebration. Trailing slightly behind him was Emily, her hands nervously clasped in front of her. The young waitress looked anxious, her gaze flickering toward Evelyn and then quickly back to the floor. Evelyn smirked, assuming the champagne was an apology for the earlier delay, or perhaps a gesture to recognize her supposed importance. "Well, it's about time," she said smugly, glancing at her friends as if to say, "This is how things should be done." But before she could say another word, the woman in gray approached their table with a calm yet commanding presence. She looked directly at Evelyn and spoke in an even, measured tone. "Good evening, I'm Melania Trump, the owner of this cafe." Evelyn froze, the smug smile slipping from her face. Her friends exchanged uneasy glances, their laughter dying down as Melania continued. "I couldn't help but notice the way you've been speaking to my staff tonight," she said, her voice steady but firm. "Particularly Emily, who happens to be my niece." The color drained from Evelyn's face as her confidence crumbled. She opened her mouth to respond, but no words came out. Around the cafe, other diners turned their attention toward the scene, their interest piqued by the unfolding drama. Melania's tone remained calm, but there was a weight to her words that silenced the room. "Money can buy comfort, convenience, and beautiful surroundings," she said, gesturing subtly to the elegant decor of the cafe. "But it does not grant anyone the right to treat others with disrespect." Evelyn shifted uncomfortably in her seat, her earlier bravado replaced by a visible unease. Her friends avoided eye contact, clearly unsure of how to react. Melania turned to the manager, who placed the envelope and champagne gently on the table. "This is not a gift for you," Melania explained, her gaze returning to Evelyn. "Instead of offering complimentary champagne, I've decided to donate the cost of your entire meal to a scholarship fund for hardworking young people like Emily." A soft murmur rippled through the cafe as customers began to realize what was happening. Evelyn's mouth opened and closed as she tried to formulate a response, but Melania raised a hand to gently stop her. "This isn't about embarrassing you," she said, her voice softening slightly. "It's about showing you and everyone here that kindness and respect are worth far more than wealth or status." The cafe was silent, the gravity of Melania's words hanging in the air. Emily stood quietly beside her aunt, her head held a little higher now. Soft applause began to spread through the room as diners showed their approval of Melania's actions. Some clapped lightly, while others nodded in agreement, their expressions reflecting both respect and admiration. Evelyn sat frozen, her face pale, as Melania offered a final word of advice. "I hope this experience serves as a reminder that true character is revealed not in how you treat those above you, but in how you treat those who serve you." The cafe was silent as Melania's words hung in the air, carrying the weight of a lesson everyone could feel. Evelyn, who had once dominated the room with her loud voice and self-assured presence, now looked small and uneasy. Her friends sat awkwardly, avoiding eye contact with both Evelyn and the surrounding diners. Melania continued to speak, her voice calm but unyielding. "Instead of offering you a token apology in the form of free champagne, I've chosen to put the value of your meal towards something meaningful, a scholarship fund that supports young people who work hard for their futures." Evelyn's lips parted as if to protest, but she hesitated, sensing that no excuse would undo the situation. "I wasn't trying to be rude," she began, but Melania held up a hand, her expression softening slightly. "This isn't about assigning blame or causing humiliation," Melania said gently. "It's about reflecting on the choices we make and the impact of our words. True leadership, true class, comes from how you treat others, especially those who are working to serve you." Around the cafe, quiet murmurs of approval grew louder. Customers nodded in agreement, and some exchanged knowing glances. A few even smiled at Emily, who stood quietly by Melania's side, her posture straighter now, her cheeks flushed, not with shame but with a sense of pride she hadn't felt before. Melania turned her attention to the rest of the room, addressing not just Evelyn but everyone present. "It's easy to forget in moments of frustration that every person we encounter has a story, a struggle, and a reason they're here. Respect and kindness cost us nothing, but they can change everything for someone else." The applause that had begun softly now swelled into a gentle but steady ovation. Customers clapped, not out of malice toward Evelyn, but in admiration for the grace and dignity with which Melania had handled the situation. Evelyn, visibly shaken, avoided the gazes of those around her. Her confidence had melted into embarrassment, and she looked as though she wanted nothing more than to disappear. Melania concluded with a final statement, her voice carrying a tone of quiet authority. "Let this be a moment of reflection, not just for you, but for all of us. We are defined not by our wealth or status, but by the way we treat those around us." The other diners began to exchange soft words of encouragement with the staff, the mood in the cafe shifting toward one of warmth and kindness. Evelyn remained silent as Melania and Emily stepped away, leaving her with the envelope and the undeniable weight of the evening's events. As Evelyn and her friends left the cafe, the confidence she had displayed earlier was nowhere to be found. Her once commanding stride was now a quiet shuffle, her shoulders slightly hunched as if the weight of the evening pressed heavily upon her. The playful chatter of her friends had faded into awkward murmurs. They offered half-hearted reassurances like, "It wasn't that bad, and people will forget about it soon," but their words lacked conviction. Evelyn didn't respond. Instead, her mind replayed the events of the night, each moment sharper than the last. The way Melania had calmly called her out, the soft applause of the customers, and the look of quiet pride on Emily's face. Evelyn had always thought of herself as someone above reproach, but tonight had shown her a side of herself she wasn't proud of. Inside the cafe, the atmosphere had shifted in a profound way. The tension that had lingered after Evelyn's cruel remarks was now replaced by a sense of unity and warmth. Customers whispered to one another about what they had just witnessed, their voices filled with admiration for Melania's handling of the situation. At one table, a couple called over their waiter, a young man who had been nervously watching the earlier scene unfold. "You handled everything so well tonight," the man said, handing him a generous tip. The waiter's eyes widened in surprise as he stammered his thanks. At another table, an older woman flagged down Emily, who had returned. "You're doing a wonderful job. Keep your head up." Emily, who had been bracing herself for more criticism, felt her heart lift at the unexpected kindness. Melania, seated once more in her quiet corner, observed the ripple effects of her actions with quiet satisfaction. She hadn't spoken out for recognition or applause, but to remind everyone of the value of decency. Seeing the positive change in the room reaffirmed her belief that even small acts of courage could inspire others to do better. The night drew to a close, and as the last few customers prepared to leave, many paused to thank the staff or leave a few extra dollars on the table. A young woman on her way out said to the hostess, "That was incredible. It's not every day you see someone stand up for what's right like that." By the time Emily clocked out, she felt a little lighter, a little braver. The sting of Evelyn's cruelty had been replaced by the kindness of strangers and the unwavering support of her aunt. As she walked home, she couldn't help but think about Melania's words. "We are defined not by our wealth or status, but by the way we treat those around us." Outside the cafe, Evelyn and her friends stood by the valet stand, waiting for their car. The silence between them was heavy, punctuated only by the occasional shuffle of feet. Evelyn stared at the ground, lost in thought. When the car arrived, her friends got in first, offering her a seat in the middle. For once, Evelyn didn't protest. As the car pulled away, Evelyn glanced back at the cafe. The once bright and inviting place now seemed distant, almost unreachable. She wasn't sure if she would ever return, but one thing was clear: she would never forget the lesson she had learned that night. The evening ended peacefully. Inside the cafe, the staff cleaned up in a quieter, more thoughtful atmosphere. Customers who had left earlier talked about the event on their way home, sharing what they had seen with friends and family. The story would linger in the hearts of many, a reminder that kindness costs nothing, but can change everything. Because at the end of the day, true character isn't measured by wealth, power, or influence. It's revealed in how we treat others, especially those who work hard to serve us. If this story resonated with you and reminded you of the importance of kindness and respect, make sure to subscribe to my channel for more thought-provoking stories. Your support helps us continue sharing messages that inspire change and reflection. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.